Have you been stalling on booking a trip like I have? Well, the nerds at NerdWallet are here to help you take the first step towards making your dream a reality. NerdWallet's team of nerds research hundreds of the top credit cards, mortgages, and more so you can easily compare and find what's right for you. Maybe you're looking for some quality in-person fun with your friends, watching your team live in the NBA playoffs? NerdWallet can help you compare and find the right travel credit card with the sign-up bonus to use on flights to the game. Ready to compare your way there? Take the first step by discovering the smartest credit cards, mortgages, and more today at nerdwallet.com. NMLS 1617539.
Blue Wire.
First pick in the 1991 NBA draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Larry Johnson from University.
I'm not supposed to be here, man. A lot of people from where I'm from, don't make it.
Charlotte, we're back.
All right. Welcome in to another episode of Buzz Beat. Another draft episode of Buzz Beat. To be even more specific, it's Brian. I'm joined here by Lee. Richie is helping produce. Spencer, hopefully up to some fun Memorial Day weekend plans with the family. I know as soon as this is over with, I'm going to try to get outside for the rest of the day. But we're here to talk about the draft. So far, we've covered a handful of different prospects, including Johnny Davis, Patrick Baldwin Jr., we've also touched on Jeremy Sohan, Tari Eason, Keegan Murray. That was last week that Lee and I did. And then the week before that with Spencer, we did some of the centers for the draft. So Jalen Duren, Mark Williams, and Walker Kessler. And we also touched on Christian Coloco a little bit in that one. So if you're itching to hear that, make sure to go check those out. And hopefully some of you guys are listening in live on our Slack channel right now. So shout out to you if you're doing that. But before we jump in, Lee, how are you doing here, man?
I'm great, BG. Good to be here for another draft episode. It's fun, kind of just slowly but surely knocking out these prospects. Got kind of more of a, I would say, a wing bunch today that we're gonna look at. So. Yeah. Like you said, we've done some of the guards, we've done some of the bigs. It's a pretty heavy wing class. So it's nice to kind of start to chip away at that group a little bit, because I think there'll probably be at least one or two more wing groups that we can hit prior to the draft, which is, I think, less than a month away. Is that right?
Yeah, less than a month away at this point. Yeah, definitely need at least one more wing one. Probably need another pod that's going to touch on some of the combo guards, scoring guards, attacking guards of the draft as well. So I know at some point we've got one planned for Terquavion Smith, Blake Wesley, Ty Washington, guys like that. But that's later down the line. Yep. First things first, we're going to start off with we're going to have three prospects today. E.J. Liddell, forward out of Ohio State. Then we're going to touch on Dyson Daniels, a wing from Australia who played with the G League Ignite this year. And then to round it out, we'll go with Ousmane Dieng from France, who played in the NBL this season with the New Zealand Breakers. But yeah, let's get going, and let's start a little bit with the athletic profile for Liddell, who just came off a monster junior season at Ohio State, building off an excellent sophomore year that he had 2 seasons ago. Really kind of like one of the advanced numbers darlings in college hoops this year, but measured at the combine, 6'7" in shoes, 6'5.5" without shoes, near 7-foot wingspan, 6'11.75", and weighed in at 243 pounds. This guy is, a little under 6'6" without shoes and weighed at 243, which was probably, I think that he weighed more than both Mark Williams by a pound and Christian Coloco, another 7-foot center by 20 pounds. So interesting build.
Man's got a center of gravity.
He does. There's no doubt about that. But with that center of gravity, super strong player, especially with his back to the basket offensively. I would also say a high motor that you see that sort of in a lot of different places with Liddell, but I would almost say including defensive rebounding, will go outside of his zone and into crowds and just rip the ball out of a crowd. Race back in transition defense and get almost like what I would describe as chase down rebounds. So again, you see the high motor with Liddell a lot, and he can move for a guy that is, almost 250 pounds, but has that unique kind of body where, again, 7-foot wingspan, solid, strong player, and certainly someone that offers defensive versatility, a little bit of event creation on defense, and shooting. So I think the rep with Liddell is sort of like a safer prospect to an extent, or one with a higher floor. The way I kind of think of it with him is if it goes right, like if Liddell sticks, he's the guy that can be on winning basketball teams, can play in postseason games because of the size, the defensive versatility, which we will touch on all of this, and because he has a three-point shot that has gotten better and better over 3 seasons in Columbus with Chris Holtman in the Buckeyes, testament to his work ethic. That's also kind of one of the reasons why he reminds me a little bit of PJ Washington. It's the like power post player in college that developed a 3-point shot, is rangy, multi-positional defender. So there's some PJ sort of like vibes with Liddell to me at times. But before we dig in a little bit more on the specifics of Liddell, or if you want to go ahead and jump in on some of that stuff, Lee, I'll pass the baton over to you. Sort of general thoughts on Liddell, and if you want to pick a lane, I'm happy to follow.
Yeah, a couple points on Liddell. I think it's always interesting now that we have this kind of new dynamic where, we've got players who have tested the waters for the NBA draft in previous years and even gone and played in the combine and then returned to the NCAA for a sophomore or junior season. It's always interesting to see that. I think Liddell got constructive criticism and feedback and wasn't completely happy with maybe where his projected draft range was after his sophomore year. So he comes back, like you stated earlier, to Columbus for his junior year and just had a massive year. You touched and alluded to the 3-point shooting kind of development arc. And I just wanted to give a little more context and color to that. So his freshman year in Columbus, barely shot threes, was 19% on super, super low volumes, really wasn't a shooter. His sophomore year, he takes about 3 a game and shoots 33% from 3. So was sort of becoming someone that teams had to look out for as kind of that stretch 4 or 5 for Ohio State, but wasn't exactly shooting at an incredibly efficient clip. And then he comes back his junior year, and I would have to imagine that was part of his feedback was you laid out his profile really well, undersized, kind of hybrid post player, really good defensive rebounder, solid defensive versatility, but kind of needs to be able to stretch the floor, I think, to survive offensively, particularly in the NBA. So his junior year, he shoots almost 4 threes a game at 37% from 3. So he became a dangerous 3-point shooter. And at times, being Ohio State's biggest guy on the floor in certain lineups. So, you take all that into consideration. He's a 34% 3-point shooter for his college career. But when you see kind of the tick up year by year in not only volume, but also in percentage, I just think that's really encouraging for him as a prospect. So those were kind of the 2 things. And then the other last thing I wanted to touch on before we maybe dive a little bit deeper is he also had a massive jump in his kind of rim protection block numbers this year. He became a little bit more sturdy, I think, around the rim as the anchor of a good college defense. Now, I don't necessarily expect Liddell to step into the league as some big time help rim protector, but I do think it helps his case. And as we've seen, both of our guys, PJ Washington and Miles Bridges for the Hornets, have made strides as rim protectors throughout their career. And although that's not I don't think it's going to be Liddell's calling card by any means, with his profile and the way he plays, he does need to be able to like jump vertically and challenge attacking wings and guards the rim. I do think that'll have to be at least a part of kind of like his offering as a future NBA player. And then the other thing is like, comparisons are never the most interesting or great thing, but like it is really hard to ignore and not at least mention that kind of the Grant Williams, PJ Tucker-ish profile and role for Liddell. And then I think there's also kind of the tale as old as time conversation, but like theoretically, because you already hit on it, he's got a pretty high floor. I agree with that. I think we're both in agreement there. Like at some point, this guy becomes really good value versus some of the more risky picks in this draft. And like, I've kind of just decided I think he's worth a late first round pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there are going to be several teams that made the playoffs this past year that are drafting in the 20s that are going to agree with you. And, when EJ falls to that spot, again, he's a guy, it's not inconceivable to think of him being on the floor a year or two from now, in a playoff game, again, assuming sort of like the shot translates. You talked about the 3-point volume, just over the 3 seasons in Columbus. His first year, just 3 attempts for 100 possessions. Then sophomore year, 5.5. Then this season, over 7 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. About 30% of his total field goal attempts were from the threes. That number is going to go up though in the NBA. You know what I mean? It's going to end. Next season, it's going to be like 45% of his shots are threes. They'll take more from the corners. That type of stuff as he maybe fits into this, hybrid forward, role player, the PJ Tucker, the PJ Washington, and the Grant Williams sort of mold. A very useful player. Speaking to that usefulness, though, the versatility, guarded all 5 positions in college. Could switch out versus 1s and 2s when Ohio State was in a switch scheme. And I think he does some sort of like heady things in those situations too. It's not just switch out and slide. Like I think you can give him a little bit more responsibility. Like this past week, I was watching the Niagara game. Niagara had a really good guard the last 4 seasons named Marcus Hammond, who is actually will be playing for Notre Dame next season. So I've done some film dives on him this offseason. Like what I've seen, but Hammond's a big-time scorer. He's left-handed. And in the Ohio State Niagara game from November this past season, you could see when Liddell would switch out onto Hammond, he was ready to funnel him to his right hand. And so I thought that was like a nice little, another sort of like feather in the cap for Liddell as a switch defender. Again, you can kind of give him a little bit more responsibility in those situations when he switches out against guards that want to create their own shot or create and get downhill. So yeah, just like the scheme versatility, I guess I would say with him in college was impressive because he showed he could play drop, he could play to the level, he could switch, he could trap, he could move his feet 20 plus feet from the basket and try to, be active and be disruptive in that regard. He's not going to play drop in the NBA. I mean, I guess we've seen Grant Williams playing some drop for the Celtics against the Heat with some success in the Eastern Conference Finals, but like he's going to be a guy that like he's out there to switch, and to be that kind of, I think, defender, or maybe if you want to unlock a little bit of versatility in some small ball lineups, he'll play at the level or whatever. I think he's a sturdy lateral mover, gets in the stance, and he just looks like a rock at times when guys try to drive into him. He can absorb contact. Multiple instances of contact on the same drive. Someone will, take a dribble left. Liddell will just, they'll just bounce off EJ Liddell. Then they'll try to cross over, change directions, go to the right. He slides laterally to his left, and it's another stop, and they've got to then pass out of those situations. I don't think he's like a perfect lateral mover. He can still get taken off the bounce. He can still get caught off guard with fake dribble handoffs, like those little DHO keep possessions. That's something I felt like I noticed him struggling with at times this year. But overall, like I do think his ability to switch around and guard different positions is something that's like a big part of the package with Liddell. And again, certainly the wingspan is a big help there. I would like to add a couple other things too, specific to like event creation with his defense. Like, I don't know what he measured at the combine in terms of vertical leap. I don't have that pulled up in front of me, but I thought it, like, with some of the block numbers that Lee was referring to this season, and 8.2% block rate, which was a big jump from the previous 2 seasons, but finishes his career with a 6.5% block rate at Ohio State, which is pretty solid.
Yeah, no,
like,
that's like pretty impressive. I mean, the number this year is just a tick or two below like some of the more like
Jalen Duren, honestly.
Yeah, prominent, big time, crazy athlete rim protector. So I was digging a little deeper. I was like, wow, that's nice.
And like it's not like he just like lucks into them either. I mean, he can really get up and be explosive to block shots, help side, chase downs in transition, almost like sneak attacks on guys going up for putback finishes, and like some truly like violent blocks this season. And you can see that the quick leap ability when he's going up to block shots, or even if he's able to get out in transition, he can like get up and finish a lob too. Like, again, the wingspan and his ability to get off the floor, I think is not pretty good, pretty nice combination. Seen him block a 3-point attempt this year as well. And I just want to touch on real quickly, like one other last note I had about Liddell's pick and roll defense. There are often on his pick and roll defensive possessions, you'll see Liddell start like at or a little below the screen. And then when the exchange actually happens, like when the screen takes place, he'll switch up into the ball handler. But when he does that, there's almost this little like seemingly calculated delay trying to coax a pull-up 3, which he can contest, or the downhill drive, because again, he's not immediately switching up into the ball handler. There's like a half second or whatever, and he can absorb that downhill drive with his lateral quickness and his strength. And like, obviously that tactic, it's a little scheme dependent. There's certain like NBA pull-up shooters you can't do it against. But again, I think it just speaks a little bit to his, to just the scheme versatility and what he's able to do in the switch. So Lee, any other thoughts about Liddell's defense, the versatility, the rim protection, the switch schemes, anything come to your mind?
No, I think the only thing I would add there is like, I completely agree that defensive versatility and switchability is absolutely kind of one of his, feathers in the cap that makes him an interesting NBA prospect. You also kind of mentioned the fact that he's obviously not a perfect switch defender by any means. Like there are some limitations there, but I do think, and this is what you were kind of just saying, like I do think he does make up for some of his limitations by being a pretty cerebral player. Like obviously he's a 3-year college player, is a little bit older, and has played in a lot of big games at Ohio State. So like you would sort of expect that from him, but he can mask some of the physical limitations with like the way he reads the floor and kind of his basketball instincts on the defensive end as well. You mentioned the fact that he really does rebound kind of out of area in traffic. That's always an impressive trait that I try and look for. Last 2 things for me on him. From a Hornets perspective, he's probably like a tweener. And by that, all I mean is probably not someone that will be considered at 13 or 15 and likely gone by 45, most likely. Like maybe not, but I would find it hard to believe he would still be there at 45. So maybe not a guy that the Hornets necessarily get a shot at, but we've seen draft day trades by this front office in the past, and we've also seen them move up in the second round before to try and kind of target certain prospects. So like, I don't know. I'll say this. I wouldn't be disappointed if the Hornets moved up to try and get a guy like Liddell who fits in really well with our scheme and brings a lot of the qualities that Cuptech has kind of tried to build out on this roster.
Get on Team Shaq with WinBet. We're playing parlays, boosting odds, and laying the wildest prop bets. Don't miss another game. Download the WinBet sports betting app today.
Sign up today and win $200 in free bets when you place a $50 first-time wager on a straight bet or parlay. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 or older and present in a state where playthrough WynnBet is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
Now on to Sleeper. Sleeper is the fastest growing fantasy platform today with millions of players. You probably already have a fantasy league on there. I know I use it for my Dynasty League. It's a game-changing product unlike anything else in the industry. And now you can make money on Sleeper too by playing their new over-under game. It's super simple. First, in any sport, choose 2 or more players that you like and pick the over-under. For example, number of points in basketball or hits in baseball. Then, choose the amount of money you want to enter in the contest. If you pick correctly, you can win anywhere from 2 times to over 20 times the amount of money you put in. And the main reason I'm excited about Over Under and Sleeper is that it's the only app where I can join my buddies' contests and play together. It's got a built-in group chat where I can see and copy my friends' picks with the tap of a button. It's insanely fun to ride it out together. So now on your mobile phone, join our listener group on Sleeper at sleeper.com/Blue Wire, and Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. That's sleeper.com/Blue Wire and get that 100% deposit match. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details.
The last thing I'll say, and I'll kind of kick this to you as a question and for your maybe final thoughts before we move on. If you had to kind of steelman it and say, if he doesn't work out, what happens? And would that hinge mostly on the fact that maybe the versatility defensively just doesn't quite translate like we thought it would, and he's not quite as switchy as he needs to be? Is that maybe the one place he could get hung up to end up being like just kind of like a great European type player?
Yeah, I think it's that, or like the shooting, because like I think he'll shoot it, but it's going to be like, can he have the kind of transformation as a shooter that Grant Williams had coming into this season, right? Where the volume, the quick trigger, the slight bits of movement, which he definitely showed at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Like there's some pick and pop shooting games with him where, I mean, the Iowa game, I think it's like the first 10 minutes of that game. I mean, he's just absolutely on fire this season. So I think that, but like that's going to have to translate. It can't be like he's a complete statue. Teams aren't going to honor the 3-point shot when he's like your 4th or 5th option. You know what I mean? Totally. It's like he's got to be able to force rotations and then make plays off of that. So I think that would be the other thing. Anything else on Liddell before we move on here? There's maybe one other note I'd like to make very quickly that's sort of like off of his ability to force rotations, but Lee, anything else you'd like to add on?
No, I'm good there. That was kind of my last big thought, was just trying to think about if he fails, how would he fail? And I think I agree with you. Those are kind of the 2 places. Yeah.
And look, I think he could also improve his handle. Like he has some of the like almost Sadiq Bey style Villanova post up, like in isolation creation elements to his game where he wants to like pretty quickly put his back into guys and when he's driving, and that doesn't like speak. I mean, that can work, you know what I mean? But I think that speaks some to his sort of like his confidence and just like where the handle is in general. But I think the shot, quick load, smooth release, maybe a bit of a flat shot, but still pretty good range off of it. And again, I don't think there's like pure rim pressure with straight line drives, but when he's attacking closeout with some pull-ups, some runners, able to show touch. I think the passing from a ball mover's perspective is like not interesting. It's nothing too special, but it's enough to kind of keep the circuits flowing on offense. Transition kickouts off a live dribble, high-low looks. He even had, there was one, it was the Niagara game this season where like Ohio State ran middle screen roll. Liddell set the screen for Jamari Wheeler. He rolls. As he rolls, Kyle Young like lifts up, so it's a little roll replace action. EJ stops his roll to set a down screen for Young, and as soon as he sets the screen, he seals. And so all of a sudden he's the low man for the high-low action. It's a great seal, because again, he's very strong, he's wide. And so this forces a double team off the wing. Like the strong side wing like heads towards Liddell as the ball is like in flight to him in the post. And before he catches it with 2 hands, it comes down and the double team arrives. He has this just like not really nice one-touch pass in midair with his right hand. out to Justice Suing for a 3-point attempt, one of the rare games that Suing played this year. So I think, like, again, some of the quick decision making and it is decent, and there's some feel and craft, but like you're only going to get it in these situations where there's been some schemed up advantage, or someone else has already created the advantage and he's just helping sort of build off of it. So with that said, let's move on to our next guy.
Let's save Dieng for last.
Okay, cool.
He's a wild, weird one. I'll just say that.
All right. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and lead us off here on Daniels then, and then I'll follow suit.
Yeah. So Dyson Daniels, second year of the G League Ignite team. Obviously, Jalen Green was kind of the massive headline from the G League Ignite team in their first year. In the second year, Dyson Daniels kind of, at least in kind of like some, consensus draft Twitter, draft pontificator, hive mind, seems to have kind of emerged as the top G League prospect, as far as I can tell at this point. 19 years old, 6'6", 6'7", kind of like rangy, interesting wing for the G League Ignite. He played 30 minutes a game. He averaged 11 points, 6 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and almost 2 steals a game. So I think, just to give like a very kind of 20,000 foot view on Daniels before we start talking about him, is, he's this interesting prospect because he's a fantastic wing defensive prospect. That really is, I think, where the conversation has to start with Daniels, is his ability to guard the ball, his ability to be disruptive, kind of evidenced by some of those steal numbers that we just hit on. He can also like grab a defensive rebound and start a fast break on his own. He's got a very good sense and feel on how to move the ball and distribute. He is not yet a great shooter. I think that would be putting it mildly. So you kind of start to understand the shell of this prospect. He's a rangy, smooth, athletic wing that can really guard, that can be disruptive, that can pass, that has offensive IQ, but just doesn't really stretch the floor at all at this point in his development. So that's, I think, a decent place to start. I'll kick it to you, Brian, for maybe a little bit more of a detailed take, or just any other kind of like overview thoughts you think I missed.
Yeah, combine measurements for Daniels, height 6'6", 6'7.5" with shoes, which I think both of those may have been. I mean, people I think thought he was like 6'8" this season, so maybe that was a little bit lower than expected. Wingspan 6'10.5", like, I guess not anything super special, but still plus wingspan by a couple inches. Standing reach 8'9". I actually think, like, overall, people are, Daniels is thought to be a pretty good prospect, and you've certainly seen his stock rise recently.
He's a big riser.
Yeah, to the point where it seems like, there was maybe once upon a time where you could have conceived of him falling to 13, and now that just doesn't seem super likely. I don't think it's like entirely out of the realm of possibilities, and he is certainly someone to keep an eye on for people who are paying attention to the Hornets.
I agree.
The perimeter defense is interesting, and it's certainly something that would like, be a nice fit with Charlotte. They need someone who could bring some point of attack defense. They need someone that can guard, tougher, bigger perimeter assignments. Shows, I think, pretty good lateral quickness on the basketball. And if you mix that in with the wingspan, that's almost 6'11", maybe you have something. The team defense, I think, is pretty good. Active as an off-ball helper, will help in dig versus drives when he's one pass away, will show early help. Read actions as the low man versus cuts or pick and roll slips or dives to the hoop. I think there's some upside with him as like a backline rim protector and help side rotator. Good positioning. Good feel when reading the action and making decisions as the helper, and he can use his length when he's challenging guys at the rim, and he'll look to contest and block shots. Like he'll definitely like stick his body into the line and try to make a play. And I think he shows off a little bit of pretty impressive ground coverage when those rim protection opportunities come early in the possession or early in the action. So I think defensively, there's a lot of reasons to feel pretty good about him. Maybe not super excited, which I do think speaks to sort of this draft as a whole and where this draft is in terms of wing defenders. Now, on the pod last week, Lee, you and I spoke pretty glowingly about someone that we both like quite a bit, and that's Jeremy Sohan out of Baylor, who I think has really established himself as as far as lotto prospects go, the premier defender, both as a guy that can guard big wings away from the basketball and what he gives you in terms of his active help defense. So to just draw this sort of narrowly, Lee, how do you think Dyson Daniels compares defensively with the defense of Jeremy Sohan?
It's so funny because doing these past two episodes, you can't watch Dyson Daniels film without drawing the comparisons and the contrast in your head. They're just from just a sheer general prospect profile standpoint, they're so similar. Everything I just laid out as the high level view of pretty special forward projection defensive prospect, has a solid solid ball skills, can pass a little bit, and then just can't shoot. It's very much Jeremy Sohan.
Yeah.
I think I see more unique lateral on ball sliding laterally stuff with Daniels. He's really impressive when he's being attacked off the dribble in the G League and the way he just stays in front of guys. There is really something there that pops off on screen to me when I watch film with him. Sohan is really solid there in his own right. I just think Sohan brings so much other stuff on the defensive end with his ability to really guard up a lineup. Daniels can do it a little bit, but Dyson Daniels isn't guarding David McCormick. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and Sohan is and did. So I think Sohan guards up the lineup a whole lot more. Sohan lets you, I think, get away against certain lineups with him at the 5, whereas Daniels is just a much different type of player. And I think Sohan is probably going to be a more effective kind of help side rim protector, kind of a disruptive roamer, that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I actually tweeted this the other day, and I can't give you an evidence-based statistical case for this opinion. It's just an opinion. But for whatever reason, because neither one of them has very much to hang their hat on in this department, I'm just more bullish on Sohan's shooting. And I don't know particularly exactly why, besides the fact that it hits my eyes a little better for whatever reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe neither one of them will ever shoot it. But I just am a little more bullish on Sohan eventually becoming at least a passable catch and shoot guy.
Yeah. I think I would agree with that in part because that's just what I would want to see.
Yeah, that's the other part. I'm pulling.
Yeah. I do think guys like Daniels and Dieng made improvements as the season went along, and Dieng really came on late in the season down in the NBL. We'll talk about him in a second, but Daniels, he shot above 40% over the last month of the season from deep, not a ton of volume, but that stuff is a little interesting because with those shooting improvements and with his good, not great size, he could probably play a wing secondary role, shoot, drive, help build the advantage chain. It's I saw Daniels play last summer at the U19 FIBA World Cup for Australia, and some of the creation flashes were really, really impressive in that. And at the time, it seemed like Daniels was maybe going to be a one or a combo guard kind of. And now it seems like you can maybe move him around a little bit more. There's a little bit more two-way versatility just because he's gotten bigger. And there are some reasons to maybe be optimistic about the shot. Now, there were still times this season for the Ignite where he did work as a primary ball handler. amidst, a fairly crowded backcourt and wing guard rotation. I really like him when he can get into the floater and runner zone. He passes well from that area too. Not a flashy passer by any stretch, but again, I do think he's solid there, passing off a live dribble. And for a 6'7" wing who could pass, that's pretty interesting. But I just think he does a nice job getting into the paint, pivoting around, looking for cutters, pretty patient and cerebral in some of those sort of attack zones in traffic. Nice touch on the floaters and on the shot touch. Good size to shoot over guys. Has the shot fake and a couple other tricks in his bag. Very willing to create contact. And late in the season, I felt like for the Ignite, he started to maybe make some strides. It's just in terms of space creation and shot creation. Behind the back, step back threes. Downhill slashes in early offense or in transition, hang dribble, again, changing direction with behind the back into a gather and finish. So there's maybe a little more there. Again, I thought he looked pretty good attacking closeouts, but again, a lot of that's going to be contingent on the shot continuing to improve, even showed a willingness to take off dribble threes if in the pick and roll, if a defender went underneath the screen. But I do think smaller point of attack or on ball defenders can get into his shirt a little bit. And at times, the handle, I'm not sure if it's there in tight spaces or versus a lot of ball pressure. So I don't know. That's something else to probably, I think, keep an eye on. Again, I think there's some interesting things he does as a driver and as a finisher, the Euro step, the finishing touch, the hang dribbles. So anyways, I think there's something there. But it's going to need. I think it's going to certainly need a little bit of work. So, Lee, anything you'd like to mention here on Dyson Daniels?
Yeah, I mean, I think I hold the opinion that you're kind of he's a developmental prospect. This is at least in my opinion. This is not a guy. And look, I've been wrong before, but I don't think this is a prospect that is gonna come to a team next year and impact winning. And that doesn't mean that he isn't a very valuable asset. It just means that he's going to have to be kind of brought along because, when your calling card as a 19-year-old rookie is your kind of defensive versatility and disruptiveness, it's you have to be really special at that attribute for it truly to shine through when you're a young player. A recent example of that would be a guy like Herb Jones, who was obviously an older prospect, but made a defensive impact at day one in the NBA. That's really, really hard to do. So the point I'm making is if Daniels' best quality as a young player is his kind of defensive prowess, I'm not sure that is a recipe for him being an effective NBA player until maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road. And obviously the shooting makes me really nervous. It did come on though. You do have to pay attention to kind of the fact that late in the season, he shot it better. I mean, he's 13 for 51 from three on the year. So it was low volume, not great percentages. He did shoot 73% from the line, but that was only on 19 attempts. So I don't know how much we can really take away from that, besides the fact that he didn't get to the line a ton, although they do the thing in the G League where they shoot 1 for 2. So it would be a bit higher. I do really love the passing. He's an instinctual ball mover. He's a connector. He kind of makes little, when he gets in the lane and he does create some advantage, he does a nice job of, dumping it down to the dunker spot or kicking it out to guys who are open. He's a pretty good and willing passer in transition. I think where I just come down on Daniels is for me personally, I don't think he's going to end up being in the lottery on my personal draft board. He very likely will go in the lottery. And it's not that I don't think he's an impressive prospect. There are some things I really like about him. It's more a factor of I just can't get to a place mentally where I would be comfortable selecting this guy over Sohan or Griffin or Mathurin or Davis. And it's just And even there's even some other guards that I could throw in there, honestly, like in the mix.
Totally.
So that's more where I get hung up on Daniels than it is about anything about his game, other than the fact that if he doesn't eventually space the floor, I don't know if there's like a consistent spot for him in a good team rotation. You know what I'm saying?
No, completely agree. Like his archetype, or probably the one he's best suited for, is like to be like a connector wing right now.
Yeah.
But it's like that is contingent on him shooting.
Yeah.
Certainly agree that there's room for growth. Maybe he really does become someone who can defend a couple positions and do so at a pretty high level. Maybe not, be like a pure stopper, but at least on a night-to-night basis, be a team's, top perimeter defender. We'll see about that. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I wouldn't take this guy over, Johnny Davis, AJ Griffin, Sohan. Like, I like all of those guys more. That's where we're at with Dyson Daniels. All right, let's move on to the last guy, Ousmane Dieng, the Frenchman who spent this season playing for the New Zealand Breakers down in the NBL, which has been certainly a league to like really keep an eye on the last couple of years. Just with LaMelo, with RJ Hampton, with Josh Giddey, with Dieng and Hugo Bassan, with the Breakers this season. So this was a fun team to scout this year. But Dieng showed up on my radar about 2 years ago. I actually pulled up, when I was getting ready for this, I pulled up a story that I wrote in June 2020 for ACCSports.com when Duke actually reached out to him.
Interesting.
And there were a variety of Division I teams around the time. Arizona, Washington State, Oregon State, Wake Forest that were in on him. Memphis, I think, even offered him a scholarship. But yeah, Duke wanted to, Duke was, I don't know if Duke ever offered him, but there was a chance that he was maybe going to be in this class with, with Paolo Banchero and AJ Griffin. But at the time, it's just funny to go back and look at it. Like, they were still courting Kennedy Chandler and Max Christie and Patrick Baldwin. All those guys ended up going elsewhere. But I think kind of made a name for himself 2019 at the FIBA U19 Euro Championship. France finished second place. Dieng averaged 9 points, 3.5 assists, 3 boards. At that event, he played with Victor Wembanyama, who is going to be the number 1 pick in the 2023 draft. I think the big thing for him, or something that everyone's going to talk about with Dieng, is just like the body, like the frame that he has. He is it's the length. He's not as skinny as he used to be. Still pretty skinny, but just has one of those sort of like frames that's made for playing basketball in terms of the length, how quick and easy he moves. And then the next thing will be just like how much better he was after a rough start in New Zealand. Like how much better he was the last 2.5 months of the season, and that included like a higher degree of comfort handling and playing with the basketball. And that's actually where I'd like to start, if you don't mind, Lee, which is talking about some of the on-ball creation, pick and roll creation. I like the downhill drive and the body control on finishes. Again, he's obviously pretty skinny. The physicality isn't quite there consistently, but he will try to use his body to create and dish out contact and then look to finish off that separation. So like he's got some of, I think the mentality is there. It's just, he's going to have to get stronger, but he can mix and change speeds going in and out of handoff moves. I think his like acceleration, his change of speeds is pretty darn good for a player of his, I guess 6'9". You see some reports of him at 6'10", but I feel like, again, there's no, I don't think he measured at the combine, so we don't have like an official one to go off of, but he'll use hesitation handles or hang dribbles to create bits of advantage. In a flash, he'll also bust out some like, I guess kind of like almost like flashier live dribble moves, behind the back move to separation and to separate in transition.
Definitely has some like combination isolation
for sure.
Where it's not just like one cross and go. It's like multiple deceptions.
Yeah, he's even got the sort of like loopy wide crossover with his with his wingspan is kind of nasty. I posted a clip from the game versus Cairns. He had 2 of those. We played very well in 2 games versus them in March and April this year, but one of the games that I watched yesterday, I mean, it's like he catches it, left crossover, right crossover, boom, downhill. So yeah, again, there are the combination moves. He even shows off a little bit more craft with like fake handoffs. So he's just got some deception that allows him to kind of like get downhill. And again, I think the hang dribbles, the hesitation moves also help open up the passing reads, or even turn into some, like late in the season, he was using some stuff to get into like, off dribble, sidestep 3-point attempts. So like he was doing some pretty cool stuff with the basketball. And overall, I think the handle for an 18-year-old, 6'9" forward that's just getting better and better is interesting. The shooting touch on runners is nice, capable of finishing in that little short mid-range area. And he has with that length, he has the extension to shoot over the top of some of those matchups and just get off the floor and quickly, just bomb it in there. I do think there are times for him where it's a bit of a crutch, almost like, not trying to draw like a pure comparison, but we see this with LaMelo a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Where if he gets an angle against, he's attacking drop coverage or he's attacking a closeout, there's an angle to the hoop, we'll still see LaMelo want to get to his like runner, and he's obviously, it's a great shot for LaMelo, but sometimes you'd like to see him just say F it, right? And just barrel to the rim. I think there's sometimes when watching Dieng, I get that feeling of just like, either he settles for a runner, or there was even a game that I watched of him this week where like he's attacking drop coverage and he literally like a step outside the restricted area comes to a 2-foot stop and then goes up and scores. But it looks so awkward. Like, where again, you'd like to, the progression with him, you'd like for him to eventually try to like dunk on the guy. Once you get the guy in drop coverage pinned into the restricted area, it's like, yeah, punish them for doing that, as opposed to kind of like letting them off the hook and taking a tougher shot that needs to be. It's great that you made it, but you can maybe eat a little bit more off of that. So I actually there's some stuff I'd like to mix in, talking a little bit more about where his offense is at. But Lee, your first impressions on Dieng, and we can kind of keep it rolling for a few more minutes talking about his offense, and then maybe flip over to where he's at defensively right now. Yeah.
So, man, I mean, I have to mention this, and I almost do every single time. But it's always so, and I was telling this to Richie prior to the pod, it's always so fun to see the throwback NCAA names on these Australian teams. I mean, I think I watched 3 of.
So good, dude. So much fun. Like, underrated fun thing every time you get into one of these games.
His point guard is Peyton Siva, which is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think I watched 3 games, and 2 of the names that I loved were Scotty Machado.
Yes, amazing. Yes, I saw the Machado game too.
And then Bryce Cotton, who's like a star in the NBL. And plays on Perth, which is one of the better teams in the NBL.
I caught a Dusty Hanna's matchup, former Arkansas, and I think he was at Texas Tech too. Yeah. But yeah, saw a little Dusty Hanna's down there in the NBL. Yeah, it's so good for that. Like an underrated fun aspect of it. Oh, I saw a fair amount of Jan Wetzel too, who like is a guy that I saw a ton of doing like Malachi Floyd scouting 2 seasons ago with San Diego State.
It's the best. I have to always bring it up. So what I will tell you is, watching Dieng, I would get so down on him watching these games because, as you just said, it's a perfect transition. Like, he is so awkward at times, and he would make 3 or 4 plays, whether it would be like catching the ball and trying to attack a closeout and traveling, or driving into the lane and getting kind of bodied up and just like losing the ball, or getting just completely lost rotationally, defensively, things like, so like I would see like 3 or 4 things and I'd just be like, oh my God, like this kid just has no idea what he's doing. And then he would make one of these, as we were alluding to, he would make one of these dribble combination isolation moves where he just absolutely fools and leaves a defender in the dust, and then makes like a crafty like touch floater off the glass. And I'm just like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, agreed.
It's an experience watching this guy. Like, So what I'm trying to say is like he keep pulling me back in. I'd be like, this guy's a lost cause. And then he'd make one of these plays. He had this one play where he kind of made like a dribble isolation move, fed the ball to a post player at the elbow, and then just kept cutting and made like this really impressive, like fluid give and go play into an and one, like left-handed finish. And then again, like a couple like this of the step back isolation threes that you alluded to. I mean, so what it's been tough figuring this guy out because he makes so many plays that just look like he doesn't even belong on a basketball floor because he is so big and lanky and awkward, and he's 19 and he's still trying to figure it out. The other thing he does really well is he is kind of a solid pick and roll operator. Like he does a good job of setting his defender up. He does a good job of using the screen. He does a good job of getting downhill. I wouldn't say he's great in the pick and roll at creating for others yet, but he is pretty good in the pick and roll about getting into the lane and creating like pretty high probability kind of shots for himself. So I really like that. That's super interesting. He does have some touch around the rim. We already kind of hit on the handle, which is probably if you're forward projecting Dieng, it's like you probably lead with the handle. He's got some really nice stuff at his size.
Agreed.
The shooting splits are bad, 39, 27, 66, 26 for 96 from three on the year. But as Brian said, he came on late. He doesn't do much for me as a playmaker for others really at all yet. Just, had an assist a game, had a little bit of a negative assist to turnover ratio, but he's, again, he's a 19-year-old in a good professional league. 9 points, 4 rebounds. He's just a massive, massive project. He's a guy that you're drafting and you have to trust your development staff. You have to trust kind of his ability to really want to like take this arduous journey, this uphill journey that he's going to have to become like a productive wing scorer in the NBA. But the flashes are certainly there. Again, I kind of get back to Dieng on, there's just so many other like productive players I feel like I can take. But, if you do have the luxury of being a GM and a team that doesn't necessarily need success right away, that's okay with putting another kind of super interesting prospect in your pipeline, like that makes a ton of sense to me. It's just the push and pull of the experience of watching him on film is I think I'm like mentally exhausted from it.
Yeah. He like I don't think Toronto has a first round pick this year. In fact they don't. It's out the door to San Antonio, pick 20. But yeah, it's like if you have a player development staff and you're president of ops or GM that has some job security and some runway to work with, then he's an interesting guy because he's a wing that can really do a lot of stuff with the basketball. I thought late in the season, again, showing more and more confidence stepping into jump shots, off relocation, off movement, the occasional off dribble shot from deep. I think I agree with you as far as like the pick and roll creation goes. I think there are some interesting moments where you see the processing come to the middle of the floor as like a passer. And it's actually like, again, it's just flashes, but I like some of the stuff you see. His ability with his size, he can scan over the top of a defense off a live dribble read, and he can kick out or skip. If he was faced with the occasional random trap or double team, his ability to sort of like, again, see that happening before the second defender gets to him, and then when his teammate cuts or slips out, just a quick decision making, get them the ball in space. So some stuff like that, I actually think is pretty impressive. I like his patience with two-man empty side actions, not in a hurry to just jack up a three or drive the basketball into traffic. He'll make the defenders guard, show their coverage, then make a move, show the ability and the patience to sort of like string out ball handling opportunities in the pick and roll. When a trap or a double comes his way, again, take a couple dribbles to the side or a couple dribbles back, then make a read. We'll look to attack a switch, drive gaps, or get to his rhythm, pull up three. Saw him do that versus Kai Soto in the game against the 36ers, which I watched this week. He actually like kind of went at Soto a little bit in that game, which was fun. So I think all of that stuff is pretty interesting. And I think the Breakers did like a cool job finding some ways to feature him, like use him as like a secondary guy in pistol action or chase pick and roll. And again, he's a guy you can just see, like, I can just see him being a guy that can like create as the second side guy off of handoffs. You run one pick and roll, it's not there, you swing it to the other side. And it's Miles Bridges flowing into a triple handoff with Dieng, and Dieng's all of a sudden getting downhill, and boom, now you've got something versus defense that's still sort of like rotating around a little bit. So I just see him as a guy like that, or someone that when you come out in those like 5-out open or delay sets, you can stash him in the corner and then run him off pin down into the handoff action and try to let him get downhill or make reads off of that. Again, they gave him some primary on-ball duties late in the season, which like it's cool that he got those reps. I don't think that's really going to be him at the next level. But as far as like a secondary creator, some guy that can be another ball handler on the court, I think that's perhaps a possibility for him. And again, it's good that he got those reps. So lots of room for growth. I know we gotta wrap up here, but we'll just touch one thing I do want to touch on him defensively, and then again, so we're running out of time here. We gotta run, but I like the quick rotations, take away the roller, pick up the switch when needed. You see the defensive processing when he's like the low man in backside help situations. I kind of think like his ability and willingness to come out of the corner, if there's spread pick and roll action and there's a dive or slip man going to the rim, like he'll make the rotation and he'll look to make a play at the hoop to like get a block. I actually think like his reads as like a low man, weak side defender against pick and roll coverages are pretty good. Still has a lot of the same sort of like mistakes you see with a lot of wing defenders, but yeah, showed an impact digging down off the perimeter against post ups. And I do think there were some really nice flashes with him helping at the rim as like the last line of defense this season, which is pretty good to see those kinds of reads coming against good competition from a young player that's still developing and getting a lot better. So Lee, I know again, we're pretty much running out of time here, but any last thoughts on Dieng before we close it out here today?
No, I think you laid out kind of the defensive status for him at the moment. Like obviously, like any kind of offensively inclined super young wing, there are some issues there, but it's really hard to game out. I mean, you like the length and some of the athleticism. It's just it's almost an impossible job to try and game out what he'll look like as a defensive player in 4 to 5 years. There's just no way to know, I think. But he, I think I'm probably slightly lower on him than consensus, but like maybe one of the most fascinating watches in this entire class. So, like I had a blast with him either way.
Yeah. And super fun watch. It was the third year in a row that one of the prospects in the NBL has like offensively like made me like cock my head while watching his film, which was LaMelo 2 years ago and Josh Giddey this past season, which is interesting. And again, maybe like it speaks to maybe the pathways are a little more narrow, but if he can get to sort of those like high end development outcomes, like again, he could be a guy that helps, drive and create offense for a team in the half court. Thank you guys for listening in today. We appreciate all those who check us out live or listening to this on Spotify or Apple or any other podcast feed. Please make sure to rate and review if you haven't done that. We really appreciate that. It boosts our confidence and it's good for the algorithm. Lee doesn't know this, but when he joined BuzzFeed, he's contractually obligated to give Richie a quarter for every 5-star review we get. So we want to drain Lee's bank account and have Richie's. Yes, right. He's got exactly. So again, keep an eye out. We got a lot more draft content coming the next 4 weeks. And I do think the focus is going to be coming up on guys like Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham, Terquavion Smith, and Ty Washington. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you guys soon. Go Hornets.
What's up, y'all? I'm David.
And I'm Justice.
And the Don't Trip podcast is now a part of Blue Wire Network. Considering getting back with an ex? Want to know if a pickup line works? Or maybe you're just stuck in the friend zone.
Don't Trip is advice at no price. And we're always going to keep it real.
We engage directly with our listeners with funny segments such as Simpin' or Pimpin', where we rate pickup lines, high questions to answer the unanswerable, or live listener call-ins.
Listen to Don't Trip on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And catch the video versions on YouTube every week.
Don't trip.
We got you.